All right, everybody, let's talk about ink. First, I want to talk about the setup for ink. What you're going to need if you want to use the India ink that I have, or any of these kind of inks, which I don't know that much about. They've been here for a long time, but they're all in the ink cabinet, which is under the sink in the back, like near the painting areas. You'll see a label that says ink. What you're going to need is you're going to need probably a little palette if you plan on mixing or watering down any of the colors. You're going to need a cup of water that's pretty clean, and I would probably use one of the pointy brushes. These are round brushes. For the ink, if you can find in the cabinet a little container like this that's already labeled, I would use it. Just open it up and see if it's dried out or not. If it is dried out, you can put a few drops, and this stuff is super messy. You can put a few drops of the ink into directly into that cup. For some reason this isn't coming through, so I'm going to just look and make sure. It could be a little bit clogged, so just be very careful with this. You should be able to squeeze a few drops out. I'm getting a few drops. I don't know if you can see this. Okay, that's probably enough. Okay, I think you can see that in the video, and you can see it's also very messy. Okay, you're going to need a paper towel, and then I just cut up a few pieces of watercolor paper here, and I'm going to use that. Let me adjust my camera so you can see a little bit more of what I'm looking at. Okay, so this is just a couple swatches of watercolor paper to experiment with. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to take my jet black ink here, and I'm just going to show you what it looks like when it's not mixed with any water. And then I'm going to show you how to kind of water it down. So it's really nice and black, and you can even just experiment trying to push down. You can, get really thick lines, you can get really thin lines, okay? Now, most people when using ink, they want to kind of water it down a little bit. I'm going to move this over and use a different swatch here. To water it down, I would grab a palette, and you can put a drop of ink and then clean your brush. You see that water is going to get really dirty fast. And then you can just put a few drops of water. I use the same methods like blotting and wet on wet that I do with watercolor. I use those with ink as well. So it takes quite a bit to water it down because ink is so strong and dark. But here you can see now I have a little bit of a lighter value. And what I think is a good idea is to just try to get a range of values. So that's kind of a nice middle tone. It's pretty light middle tone. Now you can try to mix one maybe that's a little darker. And then you can kind of compare. I'm almost making a value scale. So this is the jet black, so you can really see the difference. Wet on wet technique works really nicely. Just add water. You can see my water's already pretty dirty. It gets dirty really fast. But you can do a lot of this kind of stuff, which I really love doing. Here, I'm gonna bring this a little closer so you can see. And I like to kind of just let it sit. You can also make a line of water, and the ink will follow it. So you can play around with this. I do a lot of, with my own ink paintings, I do a lot of blotting. So if I went too dark in an area, or if it's too wet, or if I just want like a cool texture, I take my paper towel and I kind of blot it up. Sometimes I let that dry, and then I draw or paint on top of that using ink. I'm not going to do a separate demo for this, but just know that these colors are also available. You could maybe just dip right into it just to check out the color. It's actually really pretty. I don't know how permanent these colors are. Usually inks are pretty permanent, meaning once they, you know, are on the paper and dry, they shouldn't move around too much. But feel free to experiment with these, and you could even water them down the same way I did with the black ink. Clean up. For cleanup here, I would say leave the jet black in this container. Be very, very, you know, just careful how much you use because it does go a long way. But anything in the palette, you really can't save. You really just need to wash out. All right, that's all.